Hi, my name's Victoria Lynn and I'm the Director of TarraWarra Museum of Art, and today is Ask a Curator Day. So we've been sent a whole bunch of questions from many interested patrons of the museum, and I thought I'd just answer some of them here for you now. The first one is, how do you stay in touch with current trends, emerging artists and groundbreaking works both locally and internationally? Well, pre-COVID, of course, I would visit lots of exhibitions, including graduation shows at some of the art schools, exhibitions in commercial galleries and artist-run spaces, right through to major retrospectives in some of the larger state-run galleries or galleries in other states in Australia, and of course, when I can, travel overseas to see some of the major international exhibitions such as the Venice Biennale or Documenta, which is held every 5 years in Germany, or indeed some of the major commercial spaces located around the world. However, post-COVID, as you can imagine, it's very difficult to stay in touch, and it's very difficult for artists to make work, show it, and continue to engage. And like many of us, life is kind of a little bit on hold at the moment. But I have visited some of the art fairs virtually, and I have attended webinars from around the world, listening to what other curators are doing and thinking, and trying to think through how we can work together in the future and how we can collaborate and understand what's happening in other countries in a world that's been rocked by the pandemic. I have another question here, which is, which artist or artwork has left the greatest impression on you and why? And the reason I want to answer that question is because there is no one artist. For curators, we like so many things, and we are curious people. We are interested in lots of different trajectories and tangents. And if we work with contemporary practice, we often are responding to what artists are responding to in the world around us. Certainly, the work of women artists has been something that I've always championed, and of course, always admired the work of the great Louise Bourgeois and the really important impact that women artists have made here in Australia as well, from the 1970s onwards in particular, and the great strides that they've made in media-based art and in performance. But there's also, of course, at the moment, a great deal of concern about climate change and climate action, and many artists around the world are leading the way for us to see our relationship to the landscape and to nature and to country in new ways. So I just love artists, and I love working with them, and I love going down the worlds that they open up to all of us. Our next question is, when given the task of curation by a particular gallery, does the gallery set the theme, or do you have carte blanche? Usually, if you're working as an independent curator and you've been invited to do a show for a gallery, there's already been a conversation about the kinds of themes or ideas that you as the curator would like to explore. And it's on that basis that you usually get the gig. So it is very much a conversation and a collaboration. All exhibitions have to respond to the place that they're being held in, the times. If it's a one-person show, then it's very much a collaboration with the artist or the artist's estate. And also, exhibitions vary from place to place. So what we might curate at TarraWarra Museum of Art will be very different from what someone might curate in another museum in another part of the world. At TarraWarra, we really pride ourselves on being site-specific, on honouring the First Peoples, the Wurundjeri of the Kulin Nation and their ancestors. We pride ourselves on the most amazing surrounds in the Yarra Valley, and many of our exhibitions are about that view. We ask our audiences to think about the view from an ecological point of view, an environmental point of view, a colonial, decolonial and Indigenous perspectives, and really think about curating and making art that is specific to the site of the Yarra Ranges. That's one way to curate for an exhibition. And our next question is, what's the most ambitious artwork you've ever had to install? There have been many. I remember a huge Mariko Mori installation that we installed at Acme when I was there back in the early 2000s. But more recently, the exhibition of Pierre Huyghe that I co-curated with Amelia Barracan at TarraWarra was perhaps one of the most ambitious exhibitions we've ever had to install. A beautiful work which was suspended from the ceiling. It was an enormous light box with music that emanated from it, smoke, coloured lights, very, very heavy, and we had to do quite a bit of engineering to install that work. And accompanying that work were two other very tricky works, one called CC Spider and the other one called Umwelt, and they both involved real insects having a presence in the museum. I know it sounds crazy because most museums want to keep the insects out, right? And we fumigate like mad. But on this occasion, we allowed the ants to crawl around and we allowed CC Spider to inhabit the ceilings of the museum. And this was all part of Pierre Huyghe's wonderful attitude towards the world around us, the nature that surrounds us, and the sort of uncanny relationships that we can forge with both the animate and the inanimate worlds that we find ourselves in. He is one of the most inspirational artists that I've ever had to work with, and that was a true triumph, I think, for all of us at TarraWarra. The next question I have is, who's been your career mentor and what advice did they give you that has resonated with you most? My career mentor would have to be the late Okwe Enwezor. He was a Nigerian curator, poet, writer, political scientist who curated some of the most important and memorable exhibitions in the world, including the Johannesburg Biennale, the 2002 Documenta, the 2015 Venice Biennale, the 2008 Gwangju Biennale, and he really set a new standard and a new perspective on what the periodic large-scale exhibition could be. Most importantly, he changed the way that we look at art of the world and stepped outside of the European American emphasis on the arts and looked to South America, Africa, Asia, Australia, First Nations artists around the world, and built up a knowledge and a body of curatorial work that will forever have reverberations. I was lucky enough to accompany him when he came to Melbourne looking for artists for Documenta, and I saw an incredible fastidiousness, and incredible energy and intelligence and dedication to each and every artist that he met. He made sure that he had enduring and really significant conversations with each of those artists, even though they may not have made it into the exhibition at the end. And of course, the only Australian artist who did make it into that show that year was Destiny Deacon from Melbourne, which was a terrific result for Australia. So the way that Okwi could really think globally but act locally and understand the local conditions in all of the countries that he visited, for me has been a very important resource for my own curating. And the final question I've got to answer today is, did you put together the Howard Arkley exhibition, and how did you go about getting the works? So the Howard Arkley exhibition was held at TarraWarra several years ago now, and I co-curated it with our curator, Anthony Fitzpatrick. We actually called the exhibition Howard Arkley and Friends because we felt that he had such an important place here in Melbourne, where he was a mentor and a great friend and a collaborator with many, many artists. So not only did we include a survey perspective on Howard's work, we also included several works of artists that he had collaborated with, mentored, taught, etc. It was a great trip down memory lane for many of them as well. The way that one researches an exhibition of an artist who is no longer with us is, of course, to start with the public collections, significant private collections, to look through auction records to see where an artwork may have ended up, to speak to the artist's estate, to speak to the artist's representative gallery, and sometimes you can uncover incredible gems. And one always tries to get a new perspective on an artist's work when one does an exhibition. And for this particular exhibition, my colleague Anthony Fitzpatrick did an incredible job, a bit of detective work really, in looking through Howard's journals and his drawings and finding some of the resonances with paintings that he did even many years later after the drawing. We also were lucky enough to look at a collection list of all the records and that he had in his studio at the time of his death, and so we created a bit of a DJ list at the time as well. An incredible opportunity to work on an artist like Howard Arkley, who is very sadly missed and has been so influential on many artists' work in Australia, particularly in relationship to his use of the suburban image, his use of colour, his use of paint, and really just his love of the everyday in Australian society.